Sam Edmund sitting in for Gerard Whateley, but the Monday means test is a pillar of the program. It's all thanks to Jamison Irish Whiskey. Gather round. Good morning to you, David King.
Morning, Sammy. Good to be with you again.
Geez, you're in good form. You are seeing them so well at the moment. First crack last night was amazing, and I know it's going well when you go off script. Meat-ax.
Oh, that wasn't mine. That was
Top
Joey.
5 meat-axes.
No, that was Joey. I just never heard anyone use the term meat-ax on air. I'd heard it in the green room.
Oh, yeah.
When we're canning the odd player or two. But meat-ax on air, I couldn't stop laughing for a while, actually.
Well, Nick Murray was the topic of conversation there. We'll
Meat-ax.
get to him in a moment. But the means test opens with the King's Gambit.
Well, you're not going to get a better look than this. So there's multiple discussion points here. But when you look at the top of the tree, you've got Sydney, Brisbane, Port Adelaide, GWS and Fremantle sitting just behind Geelong in 6th. So those out of interstate clubs or non-MCG will play, you would think this year's a high likelihood that they play a non-MCG tenant if they were to get to a grand final. So there goes that advantage of having to play effectively against someone who's playing at a home venue. You're not going to get a better look if you're an interstate club than this year. You're not going to get a better look to get to a grand final if you're Ken Hinkley. You're not going to get a better look to win the thing if you're Chris Fagan. Best list, home, come over, get the job done against a team that's a non-MCG tenant. You're not going to get a better opportunity if you're Fremantle to finish top 4, maybe win that first final. Who knows who you play? And then you get a look at home, and then you're coming to the MCG, as again we said, potentially against a non-MCG tenant. So just the way the ladder looks, there's opportunity everywhere for these groups. Like the Sydney Swans, I mean, everything that could go wrong the last few weeks has gone wrong, but there's still time to gather and go again. There's talent to come back. There's changes to be made with how they're actually playing, not just performing, but how they're playing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you're not going to get a better look than this. Top of the table with 3 weeks to go. So there's so much opportunity sitting in front of all of these coaches and clubs and players that it just smacks me between the eyes saying, okay, it's not Collingwood top of the table that you have to play them at the MCG on a grand final or a preliminary final night. It's not like GWS had to come down and play Richmond in that prelim and have 98,000 screaming against them and just dominate them from a support point of view. So things are different this year. So I think you've got to capitalise because you're not going to get this look again.
They tell us the ladder never lies. The ladder is lying more than it's ever lied before, is it not?
It's lied all year, isn't it?
It's particularly. I mean, when you consider the redemption stories now, as we said off the top, where Brisbane, coach could have been gone. Port Adelaide, coach could have been gone. Western Bulldogs, coach could have been gone. 3 of the hottest teams in the comp at the moment, closing in on top 4, and 11th can still make it in Collingwood. So this is thousandths of a second stuff, 100-metre men's Olympic final style.
Yeah, and everyone's talked up Hawthorn for weeks.
Yep.
It'll go quiet this week. You won't hear of the genius this week. You've talked about Essendon, being a top 2, top 4. Is this the new Essendon for a block of about 6 weeks through the middle of the year? And that dropped off dramatically. Is that returning? Even listening to them, they couldn't answer that for you.
Who are Geelong is a question as well, I think, that we need to ask.
Fremantle,
Carlton.
Is it real with Freo or not? So there's so many questions to get through, and you're not going to have the answers. The answers come in hindsight, really, but it's about performance. But I think the baseline is there's so many opportunities for coaches here. Like Ken Hinkley, could Ken have found an avenue with this group now? Putting a performance in like that, does that shift your whole psyche of a football club to say, we're not only good enough, we can be that dominant? This could just be in a very open year, this could be Ken's best chance.
Yep, indeed. So the King's Gambit, this is your best chance.
You're not going to get a better look than this.
So Port Adelaide have Melbourne at the MCG next. They've got a showdown with the Crows in round 23, and then Fremantle in Perth to close. So it's there for them if they're good enough, Port Adelaide. The pressure index is twofold because it concerns a group of players and it concerns a coach and his staff. The pressure index sits well and truly at the SCG on a Monday morning. The Sydney Swans, not just a 5th loss in 6 games, but a worse loss since 1993, the worst loss of John Longmire's entire coaching career. It was a 112-point embarrassment against that football club, Port Adelaide, at the weekend.
Yeah, it was. So I think we need to break this down into two parts. And the first part being with the players. Because if you have a midfield that rolls into the ground, Rowbottom, Warner, Heaney, Grundy, Parker, Gould and Mills, you're good enough not only to compete, but to be dominant with that sort of group. Now, you're up against a pretty good midfield from Port Adelaide, so you temper your expectations and actually say, well, we're in the fight with those guys. I mean, 3 of them are probably all Australian this season, and we've got a ruckman of note, and we've got a couple that are sort of working their way back from long-term absence. So we're going to be in the fight. To get beaten a contested possession in 1 quarter of football minus 24.
Minus 24 in the first half an hour.
1 quarter of football, yep. First quarter of footy. It's their worst first quarter since round 10, 2002. 22 years of football. A lot of games. What's that? That'd be 500 games of footy. Mm-hmm. So this group's got to carry that can. They've got to put their hand up and own that at a review meeting today that I don't think will pull any punches. They'll show every insipid / feeble attempt at a contested ball, at a loose ball, where they had to legitimately put their nose in the trough. They didn't do that. They didn't do it in the air. There's guys you've got to look at whether you can continue on with. You put everything goes on the table today at Sydney. Are we too tall forward of the ball? Is Amadi really the 9-goal Amadi, or is he the Amadi we've seen for 6 weeks since? That's barely a contributor. Laddams, can you actually play Peter Laddams? Look, I don't know if you can. When you see some of his efforts, I'm not sure you can take the risk on having that in your makeup. But they're the easy ones to pick on. What's happened to Chad Warner's ability to tackle? He doesn't look interested in tackling the last 2 or 3 weeks. I could have shown a dozen feeble attempts to tackle. Isaac Heaney doesn't look the same product as a midfielder in terms of winning ball, taking it from inside to outside than what he was at the start of the year. So it's easy to pick on the also-rans or the blokes that are last in the team. But Heaney and Warner have got to carry the can for this midfield now. Now, Rowbottom's just made his way back in, so we're not sort of coming at him, but they got a lot of work to do. Brodie Grundy's dropped right off. He's not the ruckman that they had for the first 5-6 weeks of the season. So for me, I look at round 1 to 15 versus the last 6 weeks. They've gone from the second best clearance team in the competition to 16th. They've gone from the 9th best contested possession team to 16th. So bear in mind that 17th and 18th will probably be 17th and 18th on the ladder, right? This is the team that's top of the table. They're getting less easy ball now. So everyone's got a plan against them. Ken Hinkley pulled a plan in on the weekend where they didn't bother to man up the Swans when they went to the extremities of the oval. So Sydney had the ball at fullback or centre-half back, and they fan wide. Port said, don't worry about fanning wide. Just stay 15 metres inside them, corridor side, and gum up the corridor. Not going to allow them to go through the corridor. And effectively, in the corridor, it become 18 Port Adelaide players versus a dozen Swans. But not going to get through. Terrific coaching. And what it's done is taken away their easy ball. So they've gone from the number 1 attack and number 1 defence for the first 15 rounds to now number 8 and 9. So something's got to shift. So how do you get that spike out of the players, Sammy? How do you get that change?
I'm staggered by the Chad Warner drop-off. 19 touches, 11 the week before, 3 clearances.
How many tackles?
He's credited with 8 tackles actually at the weekend.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. There's a few that are, as Dennis would say, wet straws.
Yeah,
where they just step through. And there's a couple from a week before.
Wet straws, I like that.
Yeah, he had some good ones.
Isaac Heaney's the other one too. Like 17, a goal, 4 clearances, just dropped right away. So this text, Warner and Heaney not willing to defend is a huge problem.
Yeah.
Florent, Lloyd need to go. So, I mean, we're going to get some pointed text here. The Swans gave up pick 19 for Peter Laddams. It has been a disaster trade. That's from Sam down in Hobart. But for me, and we can speak about that, it's all mindset. It's 100%. But you can have a plan to coach against the best system in the Cape. But if it's the best system, everyone knows what Collingwood are doing. But when they're up and going, they're still the best ball movement team in the competition. And we saw flashes of it at the weekend. So it's one thing knowing and another thing stopping. And I think Sydney's mindset is right at the heart of it, Kingy.
Yeah.
But how do you bring it back?
Well, I said sort of last night that they had this ethos of it's us versus the world, you know, and they were at you. You remember the start of the year? A Marty would outmark someone, and they'd come from everywhere to chip the guy that Marty had outmarked.
That's Papley.
It's all of them.
Yeah.
They were all doing it and mocking and laughing. Well, you know what? It's gone 180 degrees, and now the pressure's on them, and I think their focus has shifted. I think they start thinking about, you know, am I a Brownlow contender? Can I win the Brownlow? Can I be All-Australian? Can I get recognition in a contract
Would
sense?
they really be thinking like that?
100%.
Fully fledged professionals in that environment would be thinking that?
I think they have. I mean, I think they have. I think they've been distracted by the personal gains rather than what the team have been doing. I mean, how else do you explain it? How else do you explain this drop-off? Does
it start with complacency and then it snowballs? Like, you listen to Cam Mooney. He says in the great Geelong sides, they almost got bored 2/3 of the way through the season with their position assured.
The great Geelong side, so they'd already had success, though, those teams. You're talking about teams that have had that success.
Yeah.
So is that what Warner's thinking? Is he what? How many tattoos has he got?
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about, I understand teams have had success and being difficult to coach and maybe difficult to motivate, but this to me, they've lost that investment, that absolute laser-like focus on what the team needs over and above what they need.
So John Longmire's seen everything in the game.
Yeah,
he's been to how many grand finals? 4,
yeah.
won 1, seen everything as a player. So what a test for him. Like on this Monday morning in at that new facility they've got, how does he go about it? How does he reset it? How does he get back to being the side that was the runaway flag favourite only a few weeks back? And the wheels have completely fallen. What a test for one of the elder statesmen of the game.
So can the Swans become the Tigers of 2017, who went down to Geelong in round 21 of 2017 and got beaten by 2 or 3 goals and said, we've got to make change. We can't continue with the 3 tall forwards because we're just short of the mark. So we have to go smaller. And they ended up with, I think, Caddy, who was the big Towner at full forward. And they ended up with Grigg going in as the ruckman.
But it wasn't a triple figure embarrassment.
No, but it was a realisation that if we keep doing this, we're going to run aground. So I think you have to have a look at significant change to get this back on track.
Get the work rate back. Get the thirst back. Get the
not
hunger.
as simple. Everyone will say, oh, McInerney comes back in and Papley comes back in and Rampy will come back in and Melican. Everyone's got players that are out. Everyone's got talent missing. So I think that John needs to address the way they're playing, that aggression through corridor. It can't be all or nothing. There has to be a balance. I think they have to take what the opposition gives them sometimes. If they aren't going to give you those wide kicks that only track forward 15 metres, well, maybe take those. They need a shift.
Yes, let's get to the best bits for Auto Flip, the smarter way to sell your car online.
Hang on, we need to revisit something. See this music?
Royal Music.
You played this.
I did play this.
Now, I only just found this out. Otherwise, this would have been off the top. This was Gambit worthy. You had Chad Warner Day, and single-handedly brought him to his knees. He hasn't touched it since. So at that stage when you did that, I just looked up the dates. He was the 5th-rated midfielder in the competition.
He was the favourite for the Brownlow, I think. It was round 11 against the Western Bulldogs. He just had 25 and kicked 4.
Chad Warner Day, you call it.
We anointed him the best player in the comp, the king.
So since that moment, right?
No, that's not true.
Since that moment,
no, that's not true.
Since you single-handedly stopped the train, he's now just dropped outside of the top 100 AFL ranked.
Well, that has happened, but not straight after because he carried on for a couple more weeks.
Do you feel any responsibility for this? The human handbrake?
The king being dethroned. January 30th, 1649, King Charles I was beheaded. So he was the king until he wasn't. So it was right at the time of reporting, David.
I was right at the time.
It was right at the time.
I've heard that before somewhere.
It was right at the time of reporting.
Where have I heard that? Who normally goes with that line?
Chad Warner. He was flying. Now he's not. The best bit, Scott Pendlebury, the 6th member of the 400 club, and they needed him. 27 touches, 9 clearances, 6 tackles. If that banana had gone through to the punt road end, I reckon they'd still be picking the rubble up from the Shane Warne stand. It might have fallen down.
He was unreal, wasn't he?
Oh, it's massive.
What a great game. I know everyone wants to talk Carlton down and talk Collingwood up after that performance. I just thought it was a really good game. I thought it was a great game of footy, and you're going to have a winner and you're going to have a loser. And Pendles, congratulations. And he's going to blow Brent Harvey's record away, I reckon.
It was well done. And Zane Dersman's hanger on Noah Bolter, I have to give a shout out. He was airborne.
Oh,
took to the skies.
We're winning this thing soon.
The big issue, Kingy, unquestionably, is Essendon. Who are they? Where are they? Where will they take us?
And it's a great question, isn't it? It's hard. It's just hard to know week to week with Essendon. But I just want to put this on the only way to be the full body, if you like, and the major player in the game at any point is to have a turnover profile, is to have the opportunity to force the opposition into giving you the ball back in any way, shape or form. I don't care how it happens, whether it's a forward pressing team and you win it back close to goal, or you retreat back and win it and play slingshot footy, or you're just a fraction further forward than that. But I have a look at Essendon on the weekend, and they were awesome at clearance, awesome, and they scored heavily. What they scored 15 times from 32-1 clearances. That's unbelievable. That is a great return, and just shows the power that they've got in this midfield. And we've talked a lot about Parrish over the journey. Is he a good player, a very good player, a great player? I think he's a very good player. Caldwell was very good again. Merritt's been huge all year. But if you just want to go to the other side of the coin, right, and this is not being negative. This is just the gap in where the game is for the Bombers. Only the 54 intercepts on the weekend, which is really low. AFL average is about 70 per game. So 70, you go to 54, and the AFL average is about 50 points from those 70. They only scored they scored 10 times. 5 goals, 5 from turnover. I would like to see more than that. I think that you can get a bit more than that. So 61 intercepts they had. So there's still a bit of scope for improvement there for me, for the Bombers. I like their list, Sammy. So I fall in love with their list very easily, too easily probably. Mackay had his challenges on Tracy. That was a fascinating matchup. I heard Dermot at halftime just back over the fact that he thought that Mackay was getting taken up the field, turned around, taken back to goal, and being beaten on the way back. So that's a challenge. But their backline looked outside of that at times. It looked pretty solid.
Redmond was back into some form as well.
Looked really good, really good. Obviously Ridley wasn't there, so that was a big challenge. But there's a lot to like about what they do. But then you never know whether it's a tease or not. Stringer kicking the 4 was terrific. But their midfield is the reason they still give you hope that they can drag this club up the table a bit further.
I think it's something they can build on. So they're half a game outside the 8 at the moment. Games to come against the Suns at home. You should be able to lock that one in. Sydney at home, current form, you'd almost lock that one in. And Brisbane at the Gabba to close. So it's there in front of them. Now, the coach has spoken about the Gorey review. I thought during the week his was the most significant press conference when he spoke about it all being between the ears for his group, that they've consistently failed the pressure test leading into this game. They've failed the pressure test. When it gets to the crunch, they're not consistently delivering.
He took finals off the table.
He did. This was him after the game, Brad Scott, the Essendon coach, after the win over Fremantle.
I get what he's saying. And I do agree with him that I think 6th to 12th on the table is effectively the same position. Because I don't think you're a realistic chance of winning the flag. And I understand there's probably 1.5 games is the gap in that area at the moment. So that's 2 kicks of the footy across 24 rounds. So they're not massive. It's not a massive disparity. So I understand what he's saying. I just wonder what's going to happen at the end of the year. So where do they see this opportunity? Is it in the short term? Is it next year? Is it the year after? Is it still 3 years away? Are they trading 4 players prior to Tasmanian team coming in? These are the decisions you have to get right at the end of the season.
Has Nick Cox got a spot on this list as a pointy end pick?
What do you do with Reid that never plays? What do you do with Cox? Is he a player without a position?
Perkins has been in and out as well.
What are you doing with Nick Bryan, who I thought was really good on the weekend? So is he the answer going forward? Does he look to get himself out of there to get more opportunity? So there are a lot of questions, but you've got to endorse what they did. And it comes back to their midfield. Outside of that, there's still a lot of discussion.
While we're on this game, is this why some of us have doubted Fremantle? So they're 25 points to the good with most of the final quarter to run, but they've done all the hard work. They fold. Dirk's text in, please ask Kingy, will Fremantle win a premiership with Jackson and Darcy in the same team? Jackson had 0 marks, 0 kicks, 0 tackles in the second half, Dirk is saying. But how are we to possibly assess Fremantle? I've got a really tough run into September from here.
Yeah, look, I've been critical of Fremantle and I get smashed for being critical of a team that's going pretty well. But we've put them under the preliminary final integrity week on week for ages. I don't think that they necessarily create enough disruption to the opposition. So they were the ones that had 54 intercepts on the weekend and scored 6 times from intercept. 6 times in a game of footy. Well, that's not much. That's not going to win you a big final. So you've got to be able to disrupt and win the ball back as quickly as you can, as close to goal as you can. I don't think they do that. And I think that once the opposition can get the ball movement going and can get it in there, they can score. So I still think their model's a bit of a fake model, that they defend via possession. They hang on to the ball and they massage the score against number because of the control game. Now, when they go fast, I always talk about that. They look like they can score. They look better. They took a few risks on the weekend. Caleb's the wrong bit off corridor a few times, which didn't necessarily work. But I like that. I like that aggression. I think that the chaos game can suit them.
Jordan Clark is another one, a high wire actor cup. Didn't always work. No. Made some big blues down the stretch, but some good stuff too.
So I just wonder whether they're going to track down that path and embrace a bit more of that. I feel they have to, and I feel they've got a really capable list. So I'm probably ahead of time on them. Maybe their time is next year. And maybe this is another experience that you have to have across your rebuild phase. And not that they're rebuilding now, but they've been through that phase.
Richard's not happy with us. He's texting on the 40 Wings temper, 0433 98 11 16. The difference is temper. Richard, this is in capitals. Big issue, Essendon. What about Carlton, you flogs? Carlton possibly have the best list in the competition. May miss the 8 after being favourites 3 weeks ago. Richard Anglesey. Well, Richard, you just had to bide your time because they are our PFI for the wrong reasons, I would have thought.
Murray's on 3.
Preliminary final integrity. How does it sit with the Blues?
Well, the Blues, we'll get the Blues. 2 seconds. I just want to touch on Hayden Young again.
Sorry, I cut you off there. You're still going with the Dockers.
Well, Hayden Young, what he's doing at the moment is ridiculous. He kicked, his first half was unreal. I think he had 14 touches, a couple of goals. He was head-to-head with Merritt for a fair part of that. So I just want to recognise him. And if you're not prepared to tag Hayden Young, you're in real trouble. So he's becoming one of those players that you can't get the matchup wrong on. So sorry to cut you off.
Oh, not at all.
Where would you like to go?
Well, Richard will be most unhappy with you because he wants us to put Carlton in your crosshairs. We're slotting them into PFI, preliminary final integrity, more with a critical lens than a positive one. I don't even know where we start. They just look clunky, Kingy. So when they are in a position to maximise, they can't maximise. Now, that manifested itself with their first 8 scoring shots being behinds at the weekend. But their front half is the issue for me and the system going forward. How do you read the Blues?
Well, I'm a fan of the Blues. Now, I'm not worried about where they sit on the ladder. Okay, so they've got some problems, and the major everyone's pointing to me about the ruckman Pitternet and saying, "Oh, you defend this guy," and rah rah rah. I'm not sure what the other option is at the moment, but I see the upside in him, and some see the downside, which I can understand as well. And his first half was pretty poor. I thought his second half was okay, but that's not really the core of the issue. The core of the issue is Charlie Curnow. He's kicked 11 goals in 5 weeks. He's become a very average forward 50 target. If you look at the top 50 targets in the competition over the last 6 weeks, he's ranked 44th of being able to turn a targeted entry into a goal. So that's an issue. They can't win it, in my opinion, without him in supreme form. So whatever they've got to do to get this guy into form, they have to do. He just can't win one-on-ones. He couldn't shake Darcy Moore on the weekend, and he was working up the field, doing what everyone's asked to do. I'll get him up high, play the Jeremy Cameron role, and then work himself deep. He was doing all of that. 2 marks inside 50, targeted 10 times for 2 marks. And Harry didn't have much to give either. He only kicked the 1, I think. So,
and that was the freakish dribbler. Yeah. And the shadows of the siren from the boundary. So 1 goal between the two of them.
Yeah, and not traditional centre forward, full
Billy
forward.
Frampton was nudging, with all due respect to Billy Frampton, should he be nudging Harry Mackay out of the way like a second gamer? A couple of times he outpositioned him, looked far too easily.
Yeah. Yeah, so I understand everyone's channeling their energy towards Pitternet, but I'm starting at the other end. I'm starting with the big boppers forward of the ball.
But as you say, Pitnet's first 3 quarters, I thought he was slaughtered by Darcy Cameron. and turned silver service waiter in the last quarter. Some of his clearance work was outstanding in the final half an hour.
So where are we at with Walsh? Where are we at with Sam Walsh at the moment? I mean, he's getting a lot of ball, but is there enough damage in his game? Like, it's a different version this year to what we were seeing in the back half of last year. I don't know, Sammy. I just watch his game. I just think he's just become a low score involvement player. Like, if you look at his last patch of the season, he's gone 2, 4, 8, 3, 6. I mean, they're not numbers of a guy that's getting, 27 to 30 touches a week.
Does that speak to a wider issue or isolated to a player, though? Like,
player.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, player. I mean, CP Cripps, he's ripping the heart out of games. He's in there, rip, tear, bust, taking the ball from inside to outside. So those guys on the outside, he's done the heavy lifting. He's drawn the crowd in to get them into free, clear air. So when you get high uncontested numbers, so Sammy on the weekend, 7 contested, 23 uncontested. So 23 if you give the ball to Sam Walsh 23 times outside a contest, you should get a better return than that. So I think it's all well and good to start with guys like Pitternet and the guys that are sort of on the periphery of the 23, the guys that are ranked 15 to 23 in your selected team. But I'm starting at the top. They've got to get more out of Walsh. They've got to get more out of Mackay. They've got to get more out of Curnow.
Yeah, and the ruck's an issue. So it feels like he's still wrestling Michael Voss with his best 22, 23. Like it doesn't feel like it's blatantly clear, isn't it? So Cincotta comes out of the midfield. It looks better. Hewitt spends more time in there.
Yeah.
Adam Cherry had been, for whatever reason, stationed down back in recent weeks, comes into the midfield, does his hamstring at the weekend and will be missing. It still feels like they're searching for the synergy, for their best unit. I'm not sure if that rings true to you, but it feels like they can't settle on what their best team looks like.
Well, Hewitt wasn't there 3 weeks ago. So, look, I don't know. In the end, I'm not. He'll select his 23, right? And they've got more information than us on who's banged up and who's not and whether they can play. That's sort of the roles that we think they can outside looking in. But it's about performance. And if your big boys, if your top half a dozen don't perform, you're gone. It's as simple as that. And Paddy Cripps is shouldering an enormous load at the moment. He needs some friends.
His last quarter was huge again. Yeah, he's doing everything he possibly can. So that's PFI, preliminary final integrity with Carlton. I just wonder if they got that wrong. We might slip that in here, maybe, if we've got some time with the Hawthorn Football Club, who had kept the Orange Tsunami under control for 3 quarters. The loss in general to the Giants, where it got away from them at the end. This was the Hawthorn coach, Sam Mitchell, lamenting the loss up in Canberra.
So that's a coach that's saying we got some things wrong in the box that didn't allow the players to win this game. That's the concession from me. And I think that's great as a coach. If you can stand in front of your players and say, this is not all on you guys, we made some errors as well. I sort of reading between the lines. I'm looking forward to talking to Sam next Friday and say, look, is that what happened? Is that actually what transpired? Did you not separate yourself from the group but put yourself in as part of the reason why you didn't get the chocolates? Because in that last quarter, for the bulk of the quarter, Hawthorn held a loose man behind the ball. Yeah. It was Weddle or was it Impey? And that allowed Brent Daniels to go up and be an extra midfielder.
Is that 12 and a goal in the last quarter for Brent Daniels?
And the way, it's not just the 12, it was the dynamic involvement in and out of traffic.
I'd like to see his metres gained in that last half an hour as well. I reckon it'd be significant.
We can find that for you.
But they got the handball chains going, didn't they? And that spare was made redundant, wasn't
he had 280 in the last quarter, 510 from the game, 280 in the last quarter. Yeah, so he was the reason in the end, but it was the tactic that allowed him to be the reason. So once that overlap starts with the Giants, you're in trouble. So they scored 5 goals from the defensive 50. That's the first time they've done that in a quarter of football in the club's history. In the club's history.
So 28 points down at 3/4
Champion data, they like to celebrate it. They call it an ever. If it's never, ever happened,
it's an ever.
It's an ever.
This was an ever.
This is an ever. So they had 3 evers on the weekend. 3 evers. Mate, they'll be drinking cordial. They'll be going crazy on the red cordial down there today. So that was one of them. The Swans' first quarter, contested possession, -24. That was an ever.
Ever.
Giants D50, scoring 5 goals was an ever.
Ever.
So 13 inside 50s for 7 goals won. Toby Green lit it up. The Hawks only put on 10 tackles. Jesse Hogan, you have to talk about. But I just think that's a...
Sorry, what was the third ever?
third ever we'll get to in a moment.
Okay,
we'll
good.
Get to in a moment.
Keep your powder dry.
Regarding the doggies.
Let's get to the worst bits. Unfortunate to do that at the best of times, but a couple of nasty injuries. So Jordan DeGoey, the hamstring. So season over, 10 to 12 weeks. It's high grade with some tendon damage. The worst bits for Auto Flip, the smarter way to sell your car online.
One of those ones that's going to impact next year, isn't it? 10 to 12 weeks, they said, didn't they?
Yeah. So 3 months shouldn't impact next year.
Well, you miss blocks of pre-season. I think you're in a bit of you just
should be back training by December. But yeah, I mean, obviously for the here and now, that's a real loss.
Chera, what does that do?
So that's a fifth hamstring in 12 months, I think.
Fifth hammy. What's happening there?
That's a good question. What is happening? So he was subbed out of that game. He had another hamstring injury for him. Great final series last year. Just hasn't been able to get off the ground this year.
Have you heard anything about Sam DeConey?
I think he's going to be okay. Well, at least that's what the coach said. So it's a patella issue. Don't you just your heart sinks when someone goes down like that with no one around them, just to change a direction as he did. So Chris Scott saying that he expected him to play against Fremantle this coming weekend. It was in the third quarter. Yeah, he said, they tell me not to be concerned, they being our medical team. And Sam said he was fine. Well, clearly you don't. Not so much worried whether Sam's saying he's fine, but if the medical team's saying he's fine, if he is going to miss, maybe it's only going to be a 1 weeker. The curiosity, you wanted to talk about the Western Bulldogs this morning.
I did.
The curiosity being, I'd imagine, could they? Will they?
Do you know what? Right now, they might have the best midfield, the best forward line, and the best back six.
The best back six?
Yeah. I mean, what do you want your back six?
The same back six that we have smashed for years and years.
What do you want them to be?
No, I know. So this is Buku, Jones, and Lob underpinning that back six.
I understand.
But the best.
I understand what you're going to say.
That is curious.
Individually, but as a group, what are you asking them to do? What are you asking them to do?
They're doing it magnificently well. Defend turnover.
They are the third ever. They have.
Is this an ever?
This is one of the evers, right?
Bust
so
out the
red
red
last
cordial.
3 weeks as a team, in 3 games of football, they've coughed up only 56 points in total from turnover. What's that? Less than 20 points a game each. That's an ever. Never been done in a 3-game stretch, and it's been against good opposition. So if you're assessing this group on what they can deliver, since Rory Lobb's gone back, he's the third most effective interceptor in the game. And it's had a massive impact on those around him. Buku just has to play on the third option now, not the second best or the big body or the big frame. And they're running rampant. And their midfield are putting pressure on to enable them to defend. So I think you have to look at the body of work of what they're doing and say he's coached his socks off this year. This move of Lobb has been unbelievable. The move of Richards.
So just question without notice, is Lobb the move that it's hard to recall or nominate a better move, isn't there, in season than this?
Yeah, I think so. And it probably had the
was it in desperation or was it
desperation? Definitely. And they've fought against putting one of those forwards down back for so long. They'd resisted the urge to look at Norton, and I reckon it would have been one of those ones. Do we just have a look? But Lobb, I think when the fourth tall arrived back from injury, which I think was Norton, coming back from an absence, they had to do something with Lobb. So to move him, he's either going out of the team or going down back. So it was a terrific timing. And Jones was injured at the time. He was out for a couple of weeks. So he went back against the Kangaroos first week, Lobby. But you have to recognise what's happening. And I think for that turnover game, and it's not as if they're not turning the ball over. So they've conceded the 8 most turnovers, but scored the least against. So it's the correct profile. They're not defending with the footy like say Fremantle have earlier in the year.
They're the curious. They are curious in so many ways, the Western Bulldogs. Not Marcus Bontempelli's form though. Might be a straight shootout between he and Cripps for the Brownlow in a few weeks' time.
How far back is he?
I don't know, but
be a fair way back.
He'd be making up some ground at the moment because that was absolutely enormous at the
Brownlow
weekend.
night. Who do you want your money on Brownlow night? Cripps, Dacos, Sarong, Merritt, Bontempelli. Who do you want it on? Lockie Neal?
I reckon Lockie Neal might win it again.
Someone's going to get a false vote again, a false vote or two.
There's always a false vote, and there's always a vote that they should have got that they didn't get.
The old should have, could have, would have.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. That is the curiosity. What's the debate in your mind, King?
Well, the debate for me is, in talking with the Hoyne earlier this morning. The Hoyne, Daniel. Good. My cordial man.
Okay.
fascinating on the weekend that Frosty didn't go to Hogan. I was just looking at it thinking, why is Weddle on Hogan, and then every now and then it's Frosty, but he was able to take those big contested marks, basically taking the ball out of the hands of Weddle on occasion, particularly that second quarter contested mark and the last quarter.
He literally did, didn't he? He just took it right out of his mitts. I'll have that.
Yeah, thank you. That'll be mine.
He's got a bit of that about his marking style, doesn't he? I'll have that. His hands are that sticky.
I'll have you. So if you look at his last 5 weeks of footy, he's gone 5 goals against Carlton, 4 goals against Richmond, 4 against the Coast, 4 against Melbourne, and 5 against Hawthorn.
He took 11 marks against the Hawks.
He's played against Weddle instead of Frost, McDonald instead of May, Ballard instead of Collins, and Kemp instead of Wiedering. So is the competition what's going on
the
here?
Disrespect.
Well, he's destroying the second banana.
Or is it about, you know
he's
better than me.
He's a first banana man.
No, but you're not putting your first banana man on because you want your first banana to be intercepting and maximising his talents. So you just put a lock, but that's all well and good until it backfires.
You can't get your bananas wrong against Jesse. You've got to have your prime mover on Jesse. Who have they got this week, the Giants? I haven't looked this week. I'm still getting through last week.
Well,
I don't track forward.
We don't cast forward. They've got the Brisbane Lions.
Well, who do you reckon the Lions will put on him?
Well, do they put their best defender on him?
Well, this is a discussion.
I don't know. Well, given the form that you've just outlaid and the history matchups, they won't.
Well, if they don't,
they'll free Harris Andrews up to play somewhere else.
They'll waltz him through to a Coleman. You can't get beaten by Jesse Hogan. It's the old saying, don't get beaten by what you know. If you play second banana on Jesse, you bleed.
You've developed that saying now. It's don't get beaten on a Wednesday.
Wednesday. Don't lose games on a Wednesday. Yeah.
With your magnets.
Yeah. I'm going to do my 10 commandments of coaching. That's what I might do this Friday.
Did you mention Port Adelaide as well? Because they went with Radaglia instead of Aaliyah, I think, when it came to Jesse Hogan as well. So it's been happening.
They did too, you're right.
It's been happening for much of the season. That is a debate.
So we talk about Jeremy Cameron getting that matchup wrong. You bleed if you don't get that right. And we saw, as Joey termed it, the meat axe Murray, not get it done.
He had the turning circle of a Mack truck and he was playing on a Ferrari. How many times did he lead him back to the sticks, Jeremy Cameron? You could just see, because you played so much of the great vision behind the goals and such on first grade, but even on the standard broadcast angles, poor old Nick's, you just see him trailing back, gasping.
It's an awful position to be in.
Gasping for air.
When you know you can't recover, it's really difficult.
Yeah, so that's the debate. Good question, that one, for New Vision Clinics. In many ways, it's not a debate. New Vision Clinics, keyhole laser vision, next generation technology. Call 1-800-20-20-20. They got that right in so many ways for so many weeks now as the Brisbane Lions started zipping through. They were 2-5, 9 in a row, hottest team in it. But you want to talk about them under the guise of they also got it right with selection. Now, this text dropped a while back, and I've parked it.
Uh-oh.
Kings on first crack suggested Hipwood doesn't get back in. I nearly fell off the couch. Very short memory. Does he forget what he did to ignite the Lions, starting with the Doggies, where he tore Liam Jones apart? Henry Smith, the better option than Eric? Please, David.
The Igniter. Are we playing the Igniter, are we? Is that what we're doing?
Igniting Eric.
Well, he's not getting in that forward line. Why would you look at Eric back in that forward line when I think the young fella Morris has done an outstanding job? So I think Morris is getting more looks with Eric not there, and then it allows Rayner to be Rayner as a pseudo third tall, pseudo midfielder. I think it's working perfectly. If he is to come back, it's probably down back. But you can't have Payne and Hipwood. So you've got to choose one of those guys when Payne's ready to come back. So how does it look? And I'm a believer that good teams have players on the outside looking in who are capable of playing, but just because they've been there forever doesn't mean you just play them automatically.
So you're not bringing him back, and if you do, he's coming back as a defender.
Well, he'll probably play this week, but he's not playing forward. He can't play him forward. And you can't be a nice guy. You can't have sentiment in footy if you're charging towards a flag. You just pick the best makeup to give your team the best opportunity to win that game. I don't believe Eric will be a part of that. Now, Chris Fagan will probably see it differently. But what's the role, and are you choosing him above Payne or not? That would be the question for me.
So your argument is that having him inside 50 does what? Takes away from Logan Morris? Takes away from Cameron.
The second tall target is either Hipwood or Morris.
And you prefer Morris. Just having a look. So Morris kicked, it's not all about this, but Morris kicked 13 goals in 7 games, in the first 7 games of the season with Eric Hipwood alongside of him. Mm-hmm. So they can coexist, can they not? Or?
Yeah, but can they coexist? Probably. But are they a better forward line for them coexisting, or are they a better forward line a fraction smaller, a little bit more dynamic? How many tools really rip apart finals? Name in the last 3 forwards that have ripped it to shreds as key posts. Danaher was brilliant in the grand final last year. I just think that they need to look at something different. And I think Eric, if he's not to make it as a centre-half back, and he might do that, but he's got a couple of weeks to prove it. I'm not sold. I'm not sold. And I think that's the same discussion when you go to Port Adelaide. What do they do with Marshall now? Does Marshall just come straight back in now that Radaglia and Dixon are working?
Well, Beeper in Craigieburn, on your Beeper, text in earlier, Port's recent form has coincided with 3 of Ken's favourites out injured, Marshall, Burton, McEntee. And Mackay's laid out forcing a Sava forward. Hopefully Ken keeps this formula and doesn't bring back his favourites. Marshall can only come back in for Dixon or be a sub. That's Beeper in Craigieburn.
Yeah, and I'm getting a lot of feedback here, and it's not all positive. Fair to say.
That's a curiosity.
I appreciate that. 237 and 101 and 781 and 328.
There's many numbers to stop.
But Henry Smith, I like the look of Henry Smith. I'd be charging on with the young fella as the second ruck, and I think it keeps Danaher in the prime position. I just think they've got their magnets right now. With Archie deeper and Charlie Cameron further from goal. A lot to like about what Brisbane are doing, and I think the selection dilemma of Hipwood will be a fascination for the next month. It's not a discussion we're going to solve today.
They had won 8 in a row with him in the side, Eric Hipwood, though. It's not like he's
They're a good side.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think they're winning because of Hipwood.
No.
But that's the discussion, isn't it? The discussion for me is Logan Morris gets more prime opportunities with Hipwood not in that forward line.
Fagan loves his 3 tall setup. You're off the mark on this one, Kingy. We are a better product with Eric in the team.
Well, I keep saying it, if you've got the best list in the comp, you want to be winning it this year.
The seedings await before you leave us, and I've got correspondence from Jared Waitley, despite his big day, calling Noah Lyles winning the men's 100-metre final. Big day, big night at the Stade de France. But have you got a new segment that you're going to drop on us here or not?
Well, just because you had overlooked the Kangaroos for the best part of an hour and a half, and they did have a solid victory on the weekend
nothing against
the Tigers.
What's this segment called?
It's called the WTF segment because you forgot it. I wanted to put one in. I wanted an addendum.
WTF.
I want you to start talking about Sheasel. I haven't heard you talk about Harry Sheasel at all.
Well, did you read Robbo's column, the tackle today?
Robbo's column?
Oh, yes.
Did he mention you?
No.
What are you talking about?
Why would he mention me?
Well, I said you'd never mentioned him.
No, Harry Sheasley mentioned Luke Davies-Uniacke and Tristan Sherry. He said North could have 3 All-Australians, was his suspicion.
Sherry's the All-Australian ruckman.
He is?
Absolutely he is. Yep.
He's had a better season than Max Gawn?
I think so, yeah.
Has
particularly the back half of the season.
He's had a better season than the Melbourne captain?
I think so.
Okay.
You don't subscribe?
No, I wouldn't so readily say that, no. But that's okay.
What
it's
sort
an
of
opinion.
answer is that? I wouldn't so readily say
I wouldn't just categorically say he's had a better season than Max Gawn.
It's another way of saying I'm not voting.
It's a polite way of saying I couldn't disagree more. Very polite.
I'll hunt that down tonight.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll have a look at that later.
Anyway, you've got them in You've got them in WTF because they've won for the 3rd time, and we need to give them some flowers.
And I wanted the only thing they need to do now, the Kangaroos, is get that signature, Davies-Uniacke, because that's them just to take him off any trauma that could possibly come in the next 18 months. Mm-hmm. And that midfield, gee whiz. I mean, Wardlaw wasn't even there on the weekend. Yeah. And what it did do, it highlighted the gap between what Richmond are throwing out there at the moment. I called it the Punt Road Abattoir.
Yeah.
The slaughterhouse.
The vision wasn't great.
You can't have those 3 in there.
So it's Taranto and it's Hopper?
Taranto, Hopper and Prestia. You just can't have the 3 of them in there at one time.
Gee, there's some questions to be, they've been asked. There's some questions to seriously be answered in this upcoming off-season and trade period with the Richmond Football Club and the evolution of that list.
Just talk about the Kangas every now and then if you can.
That is, as I did, I mentioned Air Dersma. They're renaming Rex Air Dersma. We spoke about it earlier.
Okay.
There you go. Any excuse to get your new segment in. I wonder if that'll catch on when Jared gets back. WTF. Well, you've got the Richmond supporters upset. You've upset the Brisbane Lions support. You've upset a lot of people this morning, Kingy. But
your mother's upset?
Your mother's upset, but you've done a brilliant job of it. The seedings are for Tyre Power, Falcon Tyres, your top tip for value. I'll just read you Jared Waitley's just before he tucked himself up.
Good morning.
Yes.
Is that you, G?
He went 1, Western Bulldogs.
No audio. What's he doing here?
No audio. No, he was cooked.
He's a bit tired, is he?
He was good enough to text this in. 1 Bulldogs, 2 Brisbane, 3 Port Adelaide after a playing game with Sydney, and 4 Noah Lyles. Good night.
Noah Lyles. I tell you what, hey, let's dip our lid. Great call from Jerry.
Was a good call.
Great call.
I thought it was a great call.
That's what he's there to do.
That's high pressure.
Why you pay the big bucks.
What have you got for us with
you
this?
were acclimatised for 2 weeks to get yourself right for that 9 seconds. I've gone at 4. I've gone Sydney at 4. They've slipped a bit. I'm still holding faith, but gee, I'm getting wobbly.
I've got them there too, and I was so close to leaving them out, which would have been the bold choice, but just by virtue of the fact, small fact, they're on top, half a game still clear, have to have them in, so they're 4th for me too.
Geelong at 3 for me.
Ooh.
Yeah, I just still, the coaching of Geelong is amazing, and if you get things wrong against Geelong, you really find yourself in a hole. So normally it's Jeremy Cameron, but I like what he's doing with this midfield and Dangerfield. Wow. Doesn't he just do some things?
Bottom 10 Ken has become contender Ken. I've got Port Adelaide 3.
No, don't get
8, no. The evidence is out there for us all to see.
Let yourself down.
Port Adelaide 3.
2 for me, the Dogs, and I really wanted to put them 1, which will clearly is obvious that it's Brisbane. I think the winner of the final between Brisbane and the Dogs will win the flag. Whether they play in a prelim or a grand final is yet to be determined. If they don't play each other, Brisbane have probably won it.
I've got Footscray 2 as well. Brisbane 1. Had to be. The seedings for Tyre Power. Your locker of the round is Kumo Tyres Power Up Sale
Let's
on
do the
now.
Kangas.
Kingy, superb. You've left a trail of destruction here on the 40 Wings Temper Text. If you want to have your say on anything Kings laid out, Kings, you can do so next.
Good luck to the Hipwoods.